Okay.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jessica Linsky-Lane, and as the director of the Pittston Memorial Library, I am honored to welcome you all here today. As the director of a Pennsylvania public library, I would like to thank you and your team, Governor Shapiro, for your successful efforts to obtain over $1 billion of federal funding to expand broadband services throughout the Commonwealth. I know that I speak for all of the libraries in Luzerne County when I say we truly understand the importance and ultimate human right that it has become in the 21st century to have sufficient access to broadband services. So much of the work we do with and for our patrons relies on proper internet access. During the pandemic especially, we were able to see firsthand the importance of adequate internet services for all Pennsylvanians. Without access to broadband, especially during the pandemic, our adult patrons would have missed out on many web-based opportunities to obtain their benefits, and many of our school-aged patrons would have been left behind academically with the shift to virtual learning. In 2021 alone, while we still operated at a limited capacity under social distancing rules, the libraries of Luzerne County still saw our public computers utilized 34,000 times. County patrons accessed our wireless broadband connections well over 40,000 times, and this number has only risen in the last 18 months with a return to regular operations. We at the Pittston Memorial Library stand proudly together with the Broadband Development Authority under the belief that it truly is time to close the digital divide in Pennsylvania, and we thank you for your efforts to do just that. At this time, I would like to introduce Mayor Michael Lombardo, Mayor of the City of Pittston, a true champion for making our city better every single day through his tireless efforts over the last 25 years. Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start by acknowledging some of the elected officials and also thanking the governor and his staff for making this event possible today. It's definitely clear that we have good ears in Harrisburg that hear our communities, not only here in the Northeast, but also throughout the Commonwealth. I want to acknowledge Bob Linsky and Stan Ravinsky from our neighboring community in Jenkins Township. They are both supervisors there. I'd like to acknowledge Mayor Denise Adams from Exeter, and I'd also like to acknowledge our neighbor across the river, Mayor Ann Alfano from West Pittston. I also see our superintendent from Pittston area, Kevin Booth, is here. And my favorite Republican, my nephew, John Lombardo, who's a county councilman. And I also have two of my council people here, Councilman Ken Bangs, who's a long-term councilman in the city of Pittston, and Councilman Joe McLean. And I think I got everybody. Am I good? Don't want to miss anybody. Thank you. Governor, on behalf, I don't think much more can be said more eloquently than Jessica did in terms of the importance of broadband. But in addition to being mayor here in the city, I'm also the president of the Pennsylvania Municipal League. And I tell you that because all of our conversations, we have a list of priorities. And one of the priorities on that list is broadband deployment throughout the Commonwealth. We saw during the pandemic how important broadband was. We see it in our schools, and I'm sure Superintendent Booth can tell you that, the importance. But we do have communities here in the Northeast that are outlying and had trouble, and we saw students that were required to get information by going to public parking lots and sitting there because they did not have access in their home. And the final thing I would tell you is I'm proud to stand and be here with other elected officials, particularly locally, and we communicate. We have issues with flooding, and communication is very important, and broadband is such an integral part of the communication system. So, Governor, we applaud you for your hard work in the Commonwealth, not only broadband. I've been involved with a bunch of governors over my 25 years, and I can say that nobody has approached this marathon task in a 100-meter pace like you have. So thank you very much for your hard work here in the Commonwealth. And without further delay, I'm going to introduce our state representative, Representative James Haddock. Jim?
Good morning. It's always okay when the governor comes to Luzerne County.
Just okay?
Give me a minute, Governor. It's good when he comes to the 118th district, which is my district, but it's absolutely fantastic when he comes to Greater Pittston and especially the city of Pittston.
There you go.
There, is that a little
There
better,
you go.
Governor? Okay. So this morning I got up and my Amanda had today off, so I snuck into the closet and I pulled the suit out and the shirt, and I went in the other room and I dressed, and I went down and have a coffee, and I was sitting there and I quickly realized that I was wearing a blue suit and a white shirt. And I said, oh, this isn't going to work. So I went back upstairs and I changed the white shirt very quietly to the yellow, and I put the tie on, because I did not want to infringe on our governor's trademark of his blue suit. So I almost got in trouble for waking Amanda up. But while we're here in the city of Pittston, I live in Suskin, and we call it up on the mountain. And as the crow flies, it's less than 2 miles from here, from this building. And our neighborhood struggles with internet, high-speed internet and broadband. And that's just to the east of this building. To the south, we hit the rural part of my district, Ransom Township, and I'm looking out, I see Jim Davis from Glenburn, one of our elected officials in the township of Glenburn, and they struggle. And Ransom, as the crow flies to the south from here, or to north, excuse me, I'm saying the wrong direction, north, it's only 5 miles. So today, when we hear this $1 billion and this investment that we're going to put into the state of Pennsylvania, it is truly needed. And I think the other thing we're going to learn is that when you give Governor Shapiro over $1 billion, he's going to spend it for the good of Pennsylvania. So we thank the governor for this announcement here in the city of Pittston. Now on to our other elected official here in Pittston City, and that's the illustrious Senator Marty Flynn. And Marty, it's such a pleasure to work with you, Senator, and ladies and gentlemen, Senator Marty Flynn.
Thank you, Representative Haddock. Today I want to emphasize the critical importance of broadband access for our district. The recent announcement of over $1.16 billion in federal funding to expand the broadband infrastructure in unserved and underserved areas is a significant step towards ensuring that every Pennsylvanian has access to affordable, high-speed internet. Access to reliable broadband is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. It enhances health outcomes, it facilitates education, and it drives economic growth. Unfortunately, over 276,000 households in Pennsylvania, businesses, schools, libraries, lack broadband access, with 7,000 in this district alone remaining underserved or unserved. To address this digital divide, the Pennsylvania Broadband Development Authority was established. The PBDA will administer the federal BEAD funding and develop a comprehensive 5-year plan to connect every community in Pennsylvania. We encourage everyone in this room and everyone around for active participation in the upcoming community engagements. Your insights will help shape broadband programs and the BEAD action plan, ensuring that our community's needs are met. Access to affordable, reliable, and high-speed broadband is a right that every Pennsylvanian deserves. As your senator, I'm committed to working with our partners to bridge the digital divide. Together, let us create a future where every student can access quality education, every business can thrive, and every individual can benefit from digital connectivity. Thank you for this support, and we strive for a connected district and a more connected state. Next, I'd like to introduce to you Brandon Carson. He's the Executive Director of PBDA. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. And Representative, I guess I have to apologize to the governor. Most of my suits are blue.
You look good, man. You look good.
And most of my shirts are white, so I do apologize.
You're
Brendan, don't apologize. I've actually been telling people that after the governor came and visited here that I think I've influenced his wardrobe.
There you go. What would Mayor Lombardi wear? I'm going to go with that.
One of these kids is doing his own thing.
Love it.
I'm the one wearing pink.
So off of fashion, back to broadband. So 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to visit the White House for President Biden's announcement of the nearly $1.2 billion in funding that we're talking about here today and announcing today. This is a historic investment in broadband infrastructure and will help to provide the resources we need to expand access to hundreds of thousands of Pennsylvanians that currently lack it. So how do we maximize the use of the available funds? As part of our ongoing work, the senator had mentioned that we have some community conversations coming up. We actually have 20 community conversations, roundtable events scheduled across the Commonwealth this summer. In fact, yesterday I was in Somerset. We had staff in Lackawanna County, and we had an event last evening in York County. So we are geographically getting out across the Commonwealth this summer. Community input from these sessions will help to determine our 5-year implementation strategy and how best to utilize the available federal funding that we've been afforded. We recently announced the availability of an additional $200 million. This is in addition to the $1.16 billion being discussed here today for a capital projects fund initiative. Applications for this program are being accepted through August 9th, and we plan to make awards to local governments, businesses, and nonprofits that are working to expand internet service early next year. So while we're doing a lot of planning work now, we are planning for the $1.16 billion. We're putting a good foundation in place. We are looking to move on deployments now with this $200 million that we have available. So we have the funding. We're working on a plan to invest the funding, and we're committed to finally closing the digital divide. I can't agree with this group more. The time is now, and under the leadership of Governor Shapiro, we will accomplish the task of connecting every Pennsylvanian, not only here in Luzerne County, but across our Commonwealth. So now I have the pleasure of introducing your governor, Governor Shapiro.
Thanks, Brendan. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Let me start by thanking Jessica for having us here at your wonderful library and got a chance to meet some of your staff. They are just super vital in this community for families, for kids. We appreciate what you do every day. Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, thank you for your kind words. You have worked with a number of governors, and so I appreciate very much what you said and appreciate the partnership we have with you and mayors all across this Commonwealth. I wasn't sure where Jimmy was going with his comments, I must say, when he was describing all of us how he was getting dressed this morning, but I do want to say, on a serious note, thank you for your leadership in the House of Representatives. Thank you for the strong work you do in the majority, and thanks for always remembering that Northeastern Pennsylvania matters. You're an incredibly powerful and important voice, and I should also confess that the reason I basically wear the same thing every day is I'm colorblind, and so it makes life a whole lot easier, right? Some guys wear red jackets every day. I go blue suit, white shirt, and that is that's what we do. But I appreciate very much Representative Haddock's leadership, Senator Flynn's leadership in the Senate, always making sure that Northeastern Pennsylvania is first and foremost on people's minds. And so today, I wanted to return to Northeastern Pennsylvania, Luzerne County and Pittston in particular, to make a major announcement about something that's going to help this community and communities all across this Commonwealth. Pennsylvanians, as you well know, they learn online, they search for jobs online, they manage their bank accounts online, they get their health care, in some cases, online. And in today's world, being connected to the internet isn't a luxury. It really is a necessity. Study after study has clearly shown that when people are connected to broadband, to high-speed internet, they have better education outcomes, better healthcare outcomes, better economic and job outcomes, and I think it's up to us collectively to deliver that for the public. Sadly, too many communities across Pennsylvania just simply don't have access to high-speed, affordable internet. Across Pennsylvania, I think the senator alluded to this, there are 276,000 households, businesses, other establishments that do not have access to broadband at all. On top of that, there's another 52,000 that have spotty access or unreliable access to the internet. So those nearly 325,000 or so places, they're left behind just simply because we don't have access to internet. Let me boil this down a little closer to home. Here in Luzerne County, there are right around 7,000 businesses, homes, etc., that don't have access to high-speed, affordable internet. Listen, when parents need to drive their kids to the library in the next town over just to gain access to the internet, or local workers can't go out and apply for a job that's posted online, or doctors' offices don't have the modern tools they need to communicate with patients or consult with other specialists to be able to give a good healthcare outcome for someone, that is just evidence of how we are held back, not as a county, but as an entire Commonwealth. Connecting people to high-speed, affordable internet right now is going to help grow our economy and help strengthen our communities. I also think it's just common sense. So, my administration is now ready to do this work. Thanks to the incredible leadership of Senator Casey, Representative Cartwright, Senator Fetterman, and our other federal officials, together with President Biden, we now have the resources to be able to make meaningful progress over the next few years. Too oftentimes, groups like this stand up and vision something for their community. They have big dreams, they have big goals, but the money's not there. Now we have the resources to be able to do this, and we are hard at work making sure we spend those dollars and invest them wisely. As you heard from Brandon just a couple weeks ago, he was at the White House with President Biden when President Biden announced that Pennsylvania will receive $1.16 billion to build out broadband all across this great Commonwealth. That money will start to hit communities all across Pennsylvania early next year. And I want you to know that we have worked hard on our end to put together a plan to be able to deploy those resources quickly and effectively in the communities that need it most. This is government working together at all levels to deliver something meaningful and necessary for the good people of Pennsylvania. Let me walk you through some of the steps we've taken and what we plan to do going forward. Under the leadership of the Pennsylvania Broadband Development Authority, that's the group that is led by Brandon, my administration is working with partners at the local and federal level to bring broadband to communities all across Pennsylvania, to fill in those roughly 325,000 or so spots where we either have no internet or not reliable internet. The Pennsylvania Broadband Development Authority is responsible for coordinating the rollout of this historic investment. Let me give you just one example of the work they've done and the impact they have already had to put this into some context for you. One of the first steps was that the FCC, that's a federal agency, put out a map identifying areas with no internet or unreliable internet. Our Broadband Development Authority then went to work to compare that map, which was going to guide the work going forward, to the reality on the ground. And in fact, after reviewing that map and the reality on the ground, working with local officials and others, we discovered that there was some inaccurate reporting, meaning the FCC thought a particular house had internet when they didn't, or a particular business had internet when in fact they didn't. And so we went and basically appealed that map. We challenged that map. And as a result of the state's work under Brandon's leadership, there are now 291 additional households here in Luzerne County that will be connected to the internet. 291 that are added to that original map put out by the FCC. 291 households worth of additional resources we've been able to bring down from the federal dollars to be able to support Luzerne County. All across Pennsylvania, we went through that effort, and we were able to add another 32,000 households or businesses to that list. That's just one example of what this Broadband Development Authority has already done to expand the resources coming to Pennsylvania and make sure that everyone is able to get help from this effort. So together, we built on the good work that the FCC did to make it work better for Pennsylvania. And now we have a huge influx, over $1 billion, of of federal money that's coming here. And we have an administration made up of experts who are fighting for Pennsylvanians to quite literally put them on the map and then be able to lay that wire to get them connected to the internet. Together with local leaders like Mayor Lombardo, Representative Haddock, Senator Flynn, and others, they are determined to work together here at the local level to get people the help that they need. And again, a big shout out to Representative Cartwright and Senator Casey and Senator Fetterman for their important work at the federal level to make sure that Pennsylvania is getting more than its fair share. So now the question is, what happens next? And I know it's hard to sort of imagine, well, what does $1.16 billion actually mean to my community? So let's walk through what these next few months are going to look like and when people can expect to begin to see wire being laid and households being connected. At the state level, our Broadband Development Authority has built out a plan to deploy these resources over the course of the next 5 years to be able to put broadband in every community across Pennsylvania. At the same time, under Brandon's leadership, we've been training the workforce that we are going to need to do this work. We've got some of the most capable and wonderful union workers here across Pennsylvania who are learning the skills they need right now to be able to do this work. Then that plan that Brandon has worked on with our local partners gets submitted very soon to the federal government. They have to give it the stamp of approval. That should hopefully come later this year or very early next year. The federal government will then approve that plan or make whatever technical changes that they see fit. Once that is approved, then the federal dollars start flowing to the communities. That means we can then immediately hire crews to start laying cables, putting up towers, and making Pennsylvania's new broadband infrastructure a reality. We want you to know that this will be done in partnership with local governments and leadership in counties all across Pennsylvania. And so if you are one of those hundreds of thousands of Pennsylvanians who lack internet access, you will begin to see activity in communities across Pennsylvania later this year and then really ramping up early next year. I want you to know that once the federal government approves that plan, we will then be in a position to report back with more specificity and more granularity as to which community is going to be getting the resources and when. They'll be rolled out in a thoughtful manner to make sure that we are maximizing the labor that we have, the dollars that we have, and the need that we have. And so we'll be able to provide that in relative real time to a community. So if you're in a particular zip code, you're in a particular township, and you're wondering when it will be your turn, we'll be able to provide that to you as soon as the federal government approves our plan. We're not allowing any time to waste, and we're not sitting back waiting on anyone. We're doing all the work we need to do on our end to be prepared for when those dollars flow and the workers get busy. I just want to note that while we're back here in northeastern Pennsylvania today, it really is important to state the obvious that broadband connectivity or lack thereof, it's not an urban issue or a rural issue. It really is a Pennsylvania issue. The impact of no or slow connections, it holds all of us back as a Commonwealth. Yes, it impacts that individual family's ability to give their kids the learning resources they need or the medical appointments that are important to them. But as an entire Commonwealth, our economy, our workforce issues, so much more is held back when we are not connected at high-speed, affordable rates. That's why I'm determined to make sure that we make this a reality, real connections for people all across Pennsylvania during my time as your governor. So we have a funding plan, we have a team, and we have a plan on deployment in place to address this need. And I recognize that even after hearing that, there are some people out there who are kind of gripped with a cynicism that oftentimes hold us back from thinking big in state government, thinking big in our communities. I believe that government can be a force for positive change in our communities when we stick to doing good common sense things, when we stick to working together with partners at all levels and of both parties. When we work together toward that common good, good things can happen. And we might be able to reduce a little bit of cynicism in the process. Hell, we can rebuild 95 in 12 days. We can deploy internet here in northeastern Pennsylvania, and we are going to do it, and we're going to do it together, and we're going to prove to our communities and our constituencies that we know how to get that done together. So I want to thank again all of our partners who are here with us, local, state, and federal level. I want to thank everyone who has gotten us to this point. We've got the resources, we've got the know-how, we've got the plan, and we've got the people to deploy this, and I'm excited for what it's going to mean for families all across Pennsylvania. So I want to thank the Pittston Library again for hosting us here, and with that, I'm sure we'd be happy to entertain any questions from members of the media. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you.
Governor, I'm not wearing a red jacket.
I don't recognize you, man. I don't recognize you.
That's the red eyewitness news jacket. You were mentioning about the timetable. So there's really not a hard timetable when this work will begin as of yet, but the wheels are in motion to get the work started when the money flows into the state.
Yeah, the money's been identified. The plan's been written by Brandon and his team. It's being perfected with some of the work that we're doing with local communities. And it has to be approved by the federal government. We expect that to happen later this year, early next year. And as soon as that happens, we're off to the races.
And Governor, one last quick question. Can communities, I hate to say it, we use the word lobby for try and get their name in that list to get a higher priority?
Well, their name is already on the list. And in terms of the priority, there's so many factors that are going to go into this. Obviously, we want to hit as many people as we can with each effort in a community. We want to make sure that where the need is greatest, we're identifying that and driving those resources out. I'll let Brandon add anything to this, but once we have that plan approved by the federal government, we can sort of post up to the neighbors and let them know, okay, kind of here's relatively speaking where you are in the queue, and people kind of know when it's coming to their neighborhoods. I think that's going to put people at ease knowing that they've been seen, they've been heard, they're on the list, and they're going to get that help. Brandon, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, well said, Governor. Nothing to add.
Governor, is there any idea on what this would cost for people? It says affordable, I think, in the release that we got. Is there a ballpark?
A lot of that's going to be up to the service providers, but one of the things I hear consistently when I'm out in the community in underserved areas, they'll say to me, man, you know, I can get broadband. It's not particularly fast, but it costs a fortune to get it. And so part of the reason for that is the infrastructure is not there. The internet service providers are able to really jack up prices. I think what folks can expect are reasonable rates, reasonable kind of based on statewide standards. There'll be competition in the marketplace between the various internet service providers, which should also hopefully bring down those costs. It's hard for me to stand up here today and predict what those prices will be year 2, 3, 4 out from now. But once we have all of the infrastructure laid, real competition between those service providers, people can bank on, you know, affordable, accessible rates. There are also resources available for those who can afford, you know, relatively speaking, normally priced internet. You know, Internet Essentials from Comcast is just one example of that. There are others, other internet service providers have. And I know the representative and the senator and others work to make sure those aids for people are driven out in the communities to help them get the support they need. Anything else you want to add on that?
Yeah, if I could. Yeah, affordability is an important component of the work we're doing because, you know, you build access out to folks, and if they can't afford that access, then what have you accomplished, right? So one of the criteria, the governor mentioned that there are a lot of criteria that will go into determining how these investments are made for various communities. One of the criteria includes affordability. So internet service providers and others that apply for these funds to deploy services will need to disclose what their pricing plans will look like, various tiers of pricing plans, and that will be used to help determine how those investments are prioritized for various areas. So affordability is a big component of it.
Great. Any other questions?
Hi, Kat from WVIA. Can you talk about who will be doing the work as far as laying down the actual broadband lines? Will that be like a public-private partnership? Will the internet service providers be responsible for kind of getting out there and putting that infrastructure in?
Sure, and I'll let Brandon jump in on this. A lot of that is going to be dependent upon the workforce in particular communities, the contractors are available, and others. We're doing everything we can right now to use some of the initial resources that came in to train up that workforce and make sure they're prepared. I know there are other states, other governors I've talked to who worry that they're going to get this money and not have workers to do this work. The good thing is we're blessed with terrific workers, particularly in our building trades all across Pennsylvania, who many of them have the capacity to do this work and others are being trained to do it. So we feel like we're ahead of the game on workforce issues, but in terms of which contractor, which union, which this, that. A lot of that is going to depend upon the particular region that we're in.
Yeah, in terms of eligible recipients of the funds, you're right. You know, private internet service providers are going to be accessing these dollars, but we are encouraging public-private partnerships. In fact, for the $200 million program that I mentioned, those capital project funds, the program that's open currently, we are requiring applicants to notify the local governments that they are proposing services in, so that there is communication early and often. Our local governments have a very good sense for you know, the situation on the ground, and we want to make sure that that's being done in coordination with those partners. So we're encouraging those public-private partnerships as well.
We've probably got time for one more if anybody has.
I have a question. Regarding the affordability, Governor and Brandon, will there be programs for people, families in need who maybe can't afford that, to help them afford this service?
Absolutely, and I think I was referring to that before, but why don't you go ahead?
Yes, so there's a federal program available right now, the Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP, and that was tied into the Comcast Essentials program that the governor mentioned just a few minutes ago. So that provides a subsidy of up to $30 a month for individuals that qualify through the Affordable Connectivity Program. Those dollars were appropriated as part of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and really are serving to augment some of these investments in access that we're talking about today with the $1.16 billion.
Great. Sorry, we'll go here for our last question.
Governor Bob Kalinowski, Citizens Voice. How does Pennsylvania's allotment compare to other states, and why did you come to Pittston today to make this announcement?
I'll answer the second question, then I'll let Brandon talk about the other states. Look, I mean, maybe I'll start with the first question, then get to the second. We got what we need, and other states, I'm sure, we're lobbying for what they need. We feel good about the allotment we have, particularly with the work that the authority did to add more homes and businesses in Luzerne County and across Pennsylvania. Why did I come here? Because northeastern Pennsylvania deserves these kinds of common sense solutions in their communities that are going to make a difference. I've seen too many communities here that have been held back because they don't have access to the internet. Too many small business owners I've talked to who would like to be able to do something more, add another product, expand their sales, but can't because they don't have access to the internet. Too many moms I've talked to who struggle with their kids learning because they don't have reliable internet at home. That was particularly pronounced when, you know, more students were learning at home. And so I wanted to return to Luzerne County today after making a commitment during my campaign that we would do this, to A, show that we're doing it, and B, to recognize the struggles that have been going on here in northeastern Pennsylvania around this issue and how we are going to now be in a position to address it. These communities matter, and I wanted to be back here today to make sure they knew that help was on the way.
And Bob, see, he likes Senator Flynn and Representative Haddock. So it's nice to come here and see.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. Yeah. Do you want me to redo that answer and just say that? Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.